Today's episode is brought to you by the book Everyone is a Sinner But Me, available now at Amazon.com and BarnesandNoble.com. Pre-recorded from Volpes Studios, it's the MCS1 Show. And now your host, MCS1.
Welcome everyone, welcome to another exciting edition of the MCS1 Show. MCS1, today I got a special guest. Someone we've been trying to get on the show for like years. But Caleb and I do not shut up about trying to get. And I finally got him today. I got Shayne Barker.
Yeah!
What up, Shayne? I'm happy to have you here.
Yeah, it's great to be here.
Because Caleb and I always reference you and we actually shout, "Screw you, Shayne," in the show constantly.
That's why I don't listen to the show.
And yeah, you and the rest of America. So Shayne, today I wanted you on here to talk about microaggressions.
Oh,
we were having lunch a while ago, and you had some really interesting insights about this. And I was like, microaggressions, that fits into like the themes, but it's not something that I personally want to talk about and educate others on. I thought it'd be better to have you on to do it.
for sure. So I actually had a full
So
2-hour class on microaggressions. It was awful.
Hold on, before we get into this, like your experiences, which are already starting out to sound very positive. What is a microaggression exactly? For those at home that don't know.
Well,
Normally we looked up these definitions on the Urban Dictionary,
yeah,
but since we got you here,
the way that they kind of explained it to me was
now who do you mean by they?
my professor.
Your professor.
So they were talking more of it as a different form of bullying as when you're an adult. It's like, but you're not really bullying someone, but it's like a slight against them, and
So
people
it's like super passive aggressive.
Yeah, it's like a super passive aggressive bullying form.
Like, hey Todd, I really need you to do the dishes because there's a lot of grime on them. Is that considered a microaggression or not?
I don't know if that's it's more like you see someone do something exceptionally well and they shouldn't be, it's like you see some girl lift up something really heavy and you're like, "Hey, you're really strong for a girl."
Oh.
Where it's like you're saying,
So it's like embracing. It's like going against a stereotype.
yeah, it's like going against it, but at the same time you're also like embracing it.
Yeah.
You're saying I totally think that stereotypes exist and that they're
But
right.
you don't fit the bill on
But
them.
you
and
don't.
That upsets me.
And then people are like, "Well, why should why should I be exactly like that thing?"
Ah.
It's kind of like when people see me, taking care of my son. They're like, "Oh, you're a really good dad. You do a lot of things with your kid." And I'm like, "Well, it's my son. Like,
What
yeah,
am
of
I
course.
supposed to
What
do?
am I supposed to just leave him in the car seat in the car? Like, what's the plan here?"
Car seat, baby. Yeah.
It's
Like.
I just get frustrated because I'm like, I get where the people are coming from too, because it does make sense because people say these things and you're like, "What, are you stupid?" Like, I'm I'm an adult and I take care of my son. Just because I'm a male and I stay at home with my son does mean that I'm lazy and worthless. But
Stay-at-home dad.
Stay-at-home dad is a completely worthless occupation. But I can see why some people can get offended by it, but a lot of the times people don't mean for these things to be offensive.
Yeah.
So after this class, we talked all about microaggressions and why they hurt people's feelings and how that can relate to things. This girl came over and she was like, "Oh, it's my birthday today." And I was like, "Oh, cool. How old are you?" She's like, "Oh, I'm 23." And I was like, "Oh." I was like, "Yeah, when I was 23, I'd been married for a year." And then she just looked down and I was like, "Oh, that was a microaggression, wasn't it?" And it really was. And she just looked at me like, "Well, thanks." And I was like, I was just referring to my own experience. I was saying,
Yeah, you didn't mean anything.
I didn't mean it.
You weren't like, by the way, I was like married by the time I was your age, so good luck, girl.
And as if to say that being married means anything. Because I know a lot of people that have been married that
Well, in Utah it does.
Well, I know, obviously.
I mean, if you're not married by the time you're 25, you are a menace to society.
You're a problem.
Yeah, you're a problem.
And so, as if to say that people can't just go get married. Unless, it's your cousin, then you can't get married. But sometimes things are purposefully meant to be, a slight against someone.
Yeah.
Like, "Oh, you're really smart for a Mexican." Like where that's like obviously offensive and obviously not correct.
Yeah.
But people have taken this term of microaggression and have expounded it into being a way to be offended by everything that everyone says. And when you're offended, you're right.
Ah, that explains Happy Valley so
As
much.
soon as you say I'm offended, no one can argue with you and no one can actually meet you anywhere because all you have to say is I'm offended. And then everyone shuts down because they're like, "Well, I'm sorry." Even if they had a good point, even if what they were trying to say really was meaningful,
You know, that kind of offends me. I'm offended,
I'm
Shane.
sorry, I should just shut down.
Yes. Gonna turn off your mic right now,
And
like they do on
I'm
other
just
talk
done.
radio shows.
It's so like I can see where people are coming from that yeah, like it's not fun to be stereotyped and be put into like a specific set of labels.
Yeah,
But I was like that's what humans do. It's the way for us to organize our world.
yeah.
And
It's just
so
setting everything up into categories,
yeah,
to
it's
be
like that's
honest.
what your brain does and it doesn't naturally and it's just part of who we are. And so not to say that it's correct all the time because not all of my assumptions are about specific people are always correct. Most of the time they're wrong. But I think that when people take it to the extreme to say, I'm offended by that and you shouldn't be able to say things that
Then
you're
it's like, where is it? Freedom of speech,
yeah,
or I mean, whose rights trump whose in this situation?
exactly. And they're trying to say that everyone has to be coddled. Because I'm like, you're gonna go outside in the world and someone's gonna say offensive things to you. It
Yeah.
might be the skinhead on the bus, but it probably won't be.
Yeah. Caleb and I were talking about this a couple shows ago. We did one on the triggering.
Oh yes.
About a year ago, we talked about that, and it was so funny because we were talking about safe spaces. I'm like, what? Because when I went to college, there were no safe spaces, and I was wondering what do these consist of? And I looked into some of it. It's like happy music, padded, lots of pillows and stuff like that. It's very calm, and it reminded me of a mental institution. Like
Actually,
when,
that
when when I
was
thought more into it, I'm like, oh my gosh, it's kind of like a mental institution because it doesn't have anything to stimulate your mind. And it's very relaxing. And I'm not saying it's not okay to have a safe space by any means. What I'm saying is the way that these safe spaces in college were described to me reminded me of that. And that kind of like, I don't know, made me kind of worried.
yeah, actually in one of my classes we talk a lot about safe spaces and we actually talk about them in the setting
In the
of
safe space at college.
no, not even at safe spaces at college. We're actually talking about them in a setting of mental health
Okay.
where people have extreme agitation and usually get restrained. And safe spaces have been a way to avoid people being restrained because people can say, "Hey, I'm having some problems. Either they're schizophrenic and they're having some like auditory hallucinations, hearing voices, or having a lot of other issues going on with like sensations."
Hmm.
They can say, "Hey, I'm having some problems right now. I need to take a break. Is it okay if I go to this room?" Where they can go and they can kind of be desensitized from what's going on around them
Yeah.
and allow that agitation to go down.
And for most people, that's like their personal rooms
Yeah,
or their homes
yeah.
usually.
And I think that as
But then
I
it kind of evolved into the
it
colleges.
calls, and then people are demanding it and saying that everyone deserves it, but I'm like, this is designed for a very specific population of people
Yeah.
that have like extreme agitation and extreme sensory problems, and
Like Beavis for Beavis and
like
Butthead.
Beavis and Butthead.
I know my safe space. Like I'm just not safe right here. Everything's going nuts.
And I think,
You should calm down and go to your safe
I
space.
understand, when you feel attacked that you feel like you may need somewhere to go, but also if you're feeling attacked, grow up and learn how to like defend yourself. Like
Yeah.
say, learn how to come up with an argument. And if you feel like
Or
someone's
just tell people you're offended.
yeah, or just tell people you're offended,
You're offended, and then they drop
then
everything.
they have to drop everything
Yeah.
or else then they're a fascist. That's I was just telling my professor the other day that I instantly devalue everyone's argument as soon as they say the word fascist in it. As soon as they
Yeah,
mention it.
it's become the new go-to word.
And I was
To
like,
be honest, like
"Ah."
usually, like before it was racist, and then after a while we're like, yeah, well, Trump's president. I guess racism is common enough to where it doesn't matter. Everyone's just like, well, we got a new word now. It's like fascist.
Yeah, just
I
like
mean,
as
we
soon as
we
they
got to get
say it though, I
something.
just like I just say like nothing you just said to me means anything anymore.
I think it's just name calling. Once you get to name calling, that's when it's like, well, you're not really having an argument. It's more like I'm gonna put you down. And I'm gonna be better than you based on this label.
Well, yeah, I was in a discussion with my brother-in-law one time, and at one point in time, I made a point, and he just said, "Well, it's all stupid," and I was like, That's your counterpoint? Is that it's just all stupid?" I was like,
Y-
"That's."
and honestly, that is like the basis of art of like you've lost an argument. You say
Yeah,
everything is everything is stupid. You do one of two things. You say everything is stupid. I'm offended, as you mentioned. My favorite one is just like, yeah, well, shut up.
yeah,
That's what I do when I'm out of stuff. I get to go, well, shut up.
yeah,
And it's never like a serious argument with people, but it's like always a joking one. So
and
I
so,
guess that's his go-to.
like, with the safe space, I kinda get that, like, people kinda feel a little bit like they don't have any ground to stand on with this argument, and so they're feeling a little bit like, "Hey, I need a little bit of time to think,"
Yeah.
but that's the point of interacting with people is to learn how to do those things
Yeah. And
on the
debate
fly.
and think on your feet.
Yeah, because you're not gonna be able to just sit and look at Wikipedia and then come back with an argument.
Oh yeah.
I
I
mean,
know.
you can, but then you look dumb.
Well, hold
So,
on. There's this website. Hold on. I'm Wikipediaing this, and I'm gonna prove you wrong.
and I told you that this band came out before this band.
Yeah, exactly.
And on Wikipedia,
It was kind of. Did we experience that at a Perfect Circle concert?
we did.
That was. Is that what you were
Yes,
referencing
I
as
was, I
well?
was referencing that my brother had claimed that a Perfect Circle came out before Tool. Yeah,
Yeah.
and then I was like, no, no, Tool came out in 89, 90. Perfect Circle came out in 99, 2000. And I was like, it was only because Billy Howardell was a guitar tech for Tool and started a Perfect Circle
Yeah.
later. And he was just like, no, 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 I heard. And I was like, oh, this is like some conspiracy theory
Yeah.
about
Exactly.
like, and he went off and I was like, it would be awesome if this was true, but
It's so nice that the internet's out now to debunk
it
facts
is.
like this.
But it's just like I said, with going back to these like safe space and this idea is like, yeah, I can understand when people feel a little overwhelmed that you want to be able to go to a place
And
and
decompress.
decompress. But, you have, I don't know, with me, I have a room, I have a car, I go to places that I've
I
learned how
have
to cope.
Hooters.
Yes, I have Hooters.
What a terrible place to go decompress.
And I just sit there and then I devalue women and just and objectify them.
In the immortal words of Chris Rock, no one goes to Hooters for wings.
No one goes to Hooters for anything. But and I can understand that, some people feel that way. But this is real life and you can't just bar yourself away and say, I can't handle it right now, but I'll come back when I can.
Yeah.
Like, that's not how real life works. And telling people that that's how it works in college preps them to say that's how it works in real life.
Yeah.
And you can look
Which
at
kind of doesn't.
it doesn't because, if I go to a work and let's say I really botch something, which I have at work before, and I walk into this completely big storm of like, my boss is pissed and he's like, hey, you just wasted $300 worth of food last night because you didn't do something, which I did. But at least I wasn't as bad as the other guy that turned the fridge off and wasted thousands of dollars of food.
Oh,
So,
man.
I mean, but I came in, I had to look at him and say, "Yeah, I screwed up. That was my bad." And
Things happen. People are human.
take responsibility for it and deal with the I had bad feelings. I had this like guilt and this shame of like that I screwed up because I screwed up big.
Yeah.
And so I didn't just take off and be like, I need to go breathe and go into a factory and start dancing, because I needed to express my feelings. I I went to work.
Yeah.
I said, "Okay, I'll do better this next time. I'm
Yeah.
sorry."
And with that, you can always take a break and like a breather and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Um, back to microaggressions, and your class.
Yeah.
Do you have any other interesting stories involving microaggressions and your class that you would like to share?
Yeah, if you're referring to
I'm referring to whatever you want to share.
this
Shane.
wonderful lady that came in and spoke to us about Japanese internment camps, which is horrible. It's
Yeah.
not okay. And
We're not gonna say these are great.
no, and so she actually grew up in Little Japan, which was in Salt Lake City. Used to exist where the Salt Palace now exists.
Which, and upon hearing this, for me, this was so sad because I would love if there was a little Japan up in Salt Lake City. To me, that sounded so cool. finally there's like a little cultural area.
Yeah, and
I
so
mean, granted, it would probably this internment camps,
it was. Well,
but
it was from all the people that were living in the internment camp. They only gave them so much money after,
uh,
and so they were like, "Okay, go ahead." And they're out in Topaz Mountain, and where are they gonna go?
uh,
The closest place is Salt Lake, so they come to Salt Lake, and they all live together because they're all from Japan.
and then have this little Japan community.
Yeah, and
And to me,
actually,
that sounds so cool.
it was cool, and she said that she had everything within that community. That one day she was walking to her school, and she looked over and saw Temple Square, and she said, "Hey, what is that building over there?" And she had grown up there her whole life. She's 10 years old at this point in time, and she was referring to the Salt Lake Temple,
Yeah,
um, which she had no clue what it was or who went there or why it was there, and living within a quarter mile of it for 10 years. And so it was just this community had everything maintained within itself. They ended up getting rid of it to put the Salt Palace there. It was a way of like, let's make Salt Lake great again. Let's put the
Aw.
Salt Palace right here. Goodbye, Japantown.
I know, and it's ironic to me because Salt Palace is where like a lot of stuff comes, like Comic Con,
Yeah,
Fantasy Con, Beer Con, all the cons I've pretty much been to are there, and it's like kind of the cultural area where for Utah, but it's the fact that like it wiped out this other cultural community to make that makes me so
it is
sad.
sad. And so she comes in and is just telling us about growing up in Japantown. When her point is to talk about like some problems that people from like Japanese heritage might have when accessing healthcare. So that was the purpose of her coming to talk. And so she goes off explaining before World War II, all of World War II, and telling us about internment and all these different stories about. I don't even remember most of it because ended up getting kind of frustrated with her because she kept
Were
saying
you microaggressing?
I was microaggressed. She was aggressing me, and because well, what was frustrating, what I found was she was saying this is not the story that you've all heard. She's like, "Oh, you've probably all been told," and then she would explain the story about how I learned the World War II and
What you learned were alternative
yeah,
stories.
and so she was like, "This is what you were told, but this is the truth." And so she would start explaining it, and then I would say, "Well, I had an uncle that served in World War II, and he told when he went to Okinawa and when he went to Iwo Jima and actually fought in the Navy at those places, this is what he told me." And she's like, "Well, that's wrong." And I was
Yeah,
like,
and then it's a classic case of basically he said, she said, perception and their side of the story.
"Exactly," which I completely can understand that there are multiple truths, especially when it comes to history, because no one can experience all things at once.
Yeah.
And even us sitting here currently, I'm not experiencing all things that are going on in this room. And if you asked me to regurgitate what happened, I would probably give you 20% of really what happened, and most of it wouldn't make sense.
And most of it would probably be the jokes.
And most of it would be something funny. And yeah,
Yeah,
that's basically it.
pretty much.
But what bothered me so much is she kept talking about how, white people are racist and all they want is the power because they want to maintain the power and they don't want to share the power. And that's her main focus. And so I would bring up other counter arguments, not just to say, because I was like, well, white people are racist. Yes, I'm white and that just happens. So, I do agree. I think almost everyone's racist. I really do.
And in the immortal words of Avenue Q, everyone is a little bit racist.
Everyone really is. And like I said before, it's not like we mean to be. It's just we are. And it's part of our brain makeup. We just we
It's
categorize
just like with the
things.
stereotypes and
Yeah.
things like that. Yeah.
And we don't, it's not like I purposely categorize things into
Yeah.
racist and non-racist things. It just happens.
And back to this lady who was speaking, calling white people racist. I can see her perspective,
Yeah.
especially like her community is gone, and then she grew up hearing about Japanese internment camps.
Yeah,
It makes total sense why she would have these beliefs.
for sure. But she kept spouting this agenda of alternate stories. And I kept saying, well, there is an alternate story too. Then wouldn't this other story be an alternate story? Wouldn't that also make it true? And she would get more and more aggressive about it
Oh
and telling us,
no.
and anyone would raise their hand. She's like, no, that's wrong. And I was like, but that's not what you keep saying. You keep
Yeah.
saying everyone's right, but then when everyone brings up anything against what you say, it's wrong. And I
Yeah.
feel like that's kind of fits in with this microaggression thing is you want to say that we love and accept everyone until you say something that is somewhat off color or not what I agree with.
As soon as the beliefs are challenged.
Yeah, and then that's an aggression towards me, and I don't appreciate that.
Well, now I'm offended.
Now you're offended.
Yeah. Well, anyway, Shayne, it was great having you on the show. Finally.
This is it, though.
This is it?
This is it. I'm not coming back.
Oh, wait, what? No, Shayne. Why? Oh. Anyway, that's our show. I want to thank Shayne Barker for coming on. And until next time, take care of yourselves and each other. Peace.
Thank you for listening to the MCS1 Show. For bi-weekly episodes on society and counterculture, subscribe on iTunes, Google Play or Stitcher. For regular updates, show notes and links, head to the MCS1Show.com or search AOL keyword MCS1.